Hello, my name is Joe Adebato, the Director of Counseling at Burlington High School. Thank you for watching Junior College Planning Night. This event is typically offered in our auditorium live, but this year we are offering it virtually. This event is specifically geared for juniors and junior parents in regard to the college search and application process. The counseling staff will each discuss an aspect of college planning that we as a staff over the years have developed and refined that we really feel these are the most important pieces of the college process. Please keep in mind you're hearing a wealth of information in a short amount of time. And this information is communicated to juniors throughout the entire spring semester. So please remember, we are doing this as an overview of the spring semester, and it's not going to be communicated all at once to students. So please keep that in mind. One thing we did want to discuss was, or at least make you aware of, is our new website. It is Burlington Public Schools' new website. The counseling department has a new site as well. We encourage you to check it out. There's a wealth of information on there. We also have a new spot for our blog. Our blog is actually embedded within the website, and we will make updates periodically throughout the course of the semester. So we'd encourage you to look at this information. The counseling department, this is just so students and parents are aware. Most students should know this already. They should have learned freshman year. But this is a list of our counseling staff, and you're going to hear from each of these staff members tonight. One thing we do like to share with students and families is the fact that the counseling department has something called a developmental program. The developmental program, for lack of a better term, this is our curriculum. This is what we strive to do as a staff each and every year at Burlington High School. Certainly, this is just kind of a bird's eye global view of what we're doing. But at the end of the day, specifically, you can see for junior year, post-secondary exploration. That is our prime focus right now with juniors. And parents and students, you're probably aware and have noticed that your schedule second semester appears to have lightened up. You have a study hall every day. Please know that this study hall second semester is specifically geared for you to plan and meet with your counselor. We want you to have a plan ready to go, and going into the summer, it's especially important to do that. And then next year, as a senior, you will have a study hall every day first semester. Again, this is strategic. It aligns with our developmental program and helps us, again, to better plan for work with you for a plan. One of the things that students should always be doing, and we like to talk about it at all our presentations like this, you really need to start to think about what your future plans are. What are your career interests? We ask students to think about, not just in terms of the different careers that are out there, but what are you interested in? Do you like to work with people? Do you like to work with numbers? Do you like, we have a variety of classes in the school, human anatomy, for example. Do you like the dissection piece? Do you like in the world language? Do you love learning a language? So we really ask students to really kind of hone in and figure out what are their interests. Certainly strengths and weaknesses are an important part of the process, identifying where you feel like you already have some strengths. And then in terms of weaknesses, what can you work on? Where are you a little bit weaker? Maybe you want to work on your writing skills, those types of things. So just identifying what they are. Again, this is really about self-awareness. A very good question to ask is, are you college bound? Do you feel like you're ready to go to college after high school? We do have about 90% of our students that go on to secondary ed, meaning we have 90% of our students that will go to either 4 or 2-year colleges or universities. We do have students that pursue the military, okay? And we really want to make sure the student asks this question. And again, we want to work with any student for any plan, but this is a question we think is an important one to answer. And then a major. As you learn through this process, there are certain colleges that have specific majors. If you want to major in engineering, you wouldn't go to Boston College. They don't have an engineering program. If you wanted to be an English teacher, you wouldn't want to go to Worcester Polytech Institution. So you really need to know, if you do have a major in mind, that would be part of this process as you're looking at different colleges.
Hello, everyone. I'm one of the counselors, Emily Minty, and I'm going to start off just by reviewing what are the important things juniors should be doing this year to stay on top of the college process. First of all, it's really important they be using Naviance starting particularly this year and next year. So if they need any help getting back into it, we'd be happy to assist with that. It's also more important than ever to be checking your school email. So particularly be looking out for emails from your counselor or from Mr. Adebato regarding the college process this year, or also once you start signing up for information to receive from colleges, it's important to check those emails as well. Very important to stay on top of your counselor's Google Classroom. So if you're not already sure what that code is, make sure to reach out to your counselor and get it. We'll all be posting key information throughout the semester on what you should be doing for the college process. On top of the following Google Classroom, we also, of course, want to meet with you one-on-one, whether in person or virtually, and we expect that students will reach out to us to make those appointments. It's important to then also make sure to come to those appointments, and alternatively, sometimes we as counselors might reach out to students to make appointments as well. Either way, please, students, make note of that time in your calendar and make sure you show up for those appointments. This semester, fortunately, I believe all of you hopefully have a study hall built into your schedule. And the reason for that is so that you deliberately have more time to work on the college planning process. So make sure that you set aside time, whether it's during the school day or maybe after school because you have one less class that you need to do homework for. You should instead be spending that time that you would spend on a class on the college research process. Primarily this spring and summer, you should be working on coming up with a list of colleges for next year that you'd like to apply to. So why do you need to use Naviance this year? It's okay if you use other sites as well, but it is important you have to be also using Naviance. The major reason for that is that next year when we're sending your application, the counseling department sends your transcript and your recommendation letter through Naviance. So you'll need to have your colleges listed in there in order for us to send those materials. Naviance is also still one of the best places too for you to do college research and compare colleges. So that's something we're going to guide you through how to use. It's also the best place for you to determine what schools for you are safe, what are reaches, and what are realistic. And I'll go over what those categories mean in a minute. But because of a special graph in Naviance called scattergrams, it gives you the best local perspective on recent data of, what are your odds of being accepted to a particular college. Beyond those reasons, there's also different assessments you can take on Naviance to explore what careers might be good fits for you. And also there's something called a game plan where it asks basic questions about your college preferences and intentions to kind of get you started and also share with your counselor what you're interested in. There's also plenty of opportunity to research careers in addition to researching colleges on there. So speaking of researching colleges, in order to narrow down your search, it won't be possible for you to research every college that's out there because there are thousands of them just in this country. Instead, it's good to think about which factors are really important to you to help narrow down your search. So for some people, having an idea about what subjects they may potentially be interested in majoring in college can help you with your search because you can limit your search to making sure that you're finding colleges that have subjects you're interested in, or sometimes even finding colleges that are especially have good reputations for particular majors. For many students, location is an important factor that helps narrow the search. So for some, they know they want to be within a certain distance from home, meaning fairly close. Perhaps you want to be within a driving distance and don't want to have to get on a plane to get home. For others, it could be the opposite. Maybe you're sick of being in the same place your whole life and you want to try something new and further away. Either way, location will help you look into those schools that are most comfortable or exciting for you. Size is another really big deal for most people. So most colleges fall into either the small category, which usually means 3,000 students or less, or the large category, which means 10,000 students or more. Very different experience at either type of those campuses. So that's something important to get a feel for if you already don't have an idea which one you naturally gravitate toward. Cost is a factor, but I do stress, please make sure you look into the financial aid process and the true cost of college before just getting scared away based on the reported cost on a college website. Housing for some could be a factor. So, for example, there are some colleges where the majority of students live on campus all 4 years, and that could be an important feeling for people to feel like it's part of a community. For others, it might be more important if you're thinking, I want to be able to commute and I don't want to have to pay to live on campus. Then it might be important to be at a place where you're not required to live on campus. Athletics can be a big deal for some people, whether it's important they have a sport that you want to play, or for others, maybe they don't want to personally play a sport, but it's really important they just want to be at a school that has big football games. And so that's an important part of their search. And then many other kinds of programs or activities that could be important to you. So for some, it might be having a marching band program. For others, it could be a particular affinity group or radio station. The list goes on, but it's really up to you to determine when you're envisioning your perfect college, what are the factors it would have, and then that'll help guide your search. Speaking of guiding your search, many search resources now online. We would still start with Naviance as our first recommendation for some general searches you can do on there. But then you'll see listed a variety of other websites or social media opportunities. Could be ways for you to maybe get the buzz about a particular school and its personality. Google can still work if you're looking for something real specific. And on our department blog, we have other resources as well as sometimes what we call snapshots of colleges we've visited in the past. And at the bottom of the list there are websites for the testing agencies. So even though this year tests might not be a big part of your admission package, those websites do still also have college search resources as well. Speaking of visiting, so this year for many people, because of the COVID situation, the more likely way they may be visiting at this point in time would be a virtual visit. But most, really all colleges, I think at this point, have been offering a wide variety of virtual tours and information sessions, and that information is widely available if you just go to their website and look for the prospective student or the visiting section. They'll tell you, when to sign up for their webinar, when their special even online open houses sometimes that they may have. Also, there are some colleges that if you do feel comfortable going on campus for a physical tour in person, some are offering some in-person tours. So don't assume that it's not offered. Again, you would find it on the website. At last resort would be self-directed tour. By that, we mean kind of just driving by a campus or walking around on your own. In general, though, I would strongly advise doing some kind of a tour where they're going to have a record of the fact that you toured. So whether that's an online tour that you signed up for or an in-person tour that you signed up for, that will demonstrate that you're genuinely interested in the school if it comes later that you decide to apply. So it's better to have it on record that you took that extra step to sign up for something official than to just have anonymously visited if possible. Back to the issue of how do you figure out for you, what are your odds of getting into a particular college? So the first category that I'm going to mention is the reach category. So when we talk about a reach, it really does mean this is a school that the odds are against you getting in. You know that if you apply, you're probably not going to be accepted. And there's two potential reasons it could be a reach. So most commonly, it would be because your GPA is below the average GPA for the students that college usually accepts. However, there are some of the most competitive colleges that even with a perfect GPA, the odds would still be against a student with a perfect GPA getting in, just because they're such a popular place for people to apply, and so many more qualified applicants apply than they have spaces for. So the odds would still be against getting into one of those schools, and it would be considered a reach for any student. The realistic category is the one where we feel very good about your odds of getting in, but at the same time, you don't necessarily count on the fact that you're going to get in. So at a realistic school, your GPA usually pretty much matches the average GPA of an accepted student. So you're a very strong candidate to be accepted, but that college also doesn't automatically accept all students in that GPA range. A safety school is the one where we feel almost sure that you will get in. With a four-year college, unfortunately, there's no such thing as a 100% guarantee, but I would describe a safety as a school where we feel like it's a 99% chance. And that's because your GPA is significantly above the average GPA of students they accept. And historically, when we look at our data, everyone in your GPA range has been accepted in the past. And then it's also important to think about a financial safety. So this would be a school where you have a 99% feeling you're going to get in, and that you could afford to go there if you do get in. So here's a couple examples of those scattergrams on Naviance. This is an example of a reach school. So NYU, New York University. What the dots on this graph mean, the red X's are Burlington High School students who've applied in the last couple of years who were not accepted. And the green squares are Burlington High School students who were accepted. Any blue diamonds are people that fell into a limbo category where they were put on a waiting list but probably weren't going to be accepted. So in general on this graph, more people were not accepted than were, and therefore it would be a reach even for this person whose GPA is close to a 4.0. So even though he or she is right on the average here for GPA, more people got denied than got accepted, so it would be a reach. This next graph example for Framingham State University, we see far more green squares, and there's still some red X's. So it really depends on what your GPA is, what category this would fall for different people. This person's example, though, they're way up here with their GPA significantly above the average for Framingham State, and everybody above that GPA is in that green square category. So for this particular student, Framingham State would be safe. If they were closer to the average line, it would still be looking on the safe side. I would say kind of a combination safe and realistic. Down in this range, I would put it solid realistic that still more people got in than didn't, but it's still never know. Some people didn't get in. If they were down in this range, it would be a reach. Even though a couple people got in, more people didn't get in than did, so that would be a reach. I know that's just a couple examples, but I hope that gives you the idea, and then please feel free to check in with your counselor about how to interpret other schools you may be interested in and based on your GPA. Speaking of Massachusetts state universities, they do have specific requirements, just minimum requirements of how many years you've taken various subjects in high school. And fortunately, this is something you don't have to worry about being a Burlington High School student, because our Burlington High School requirements do match or exceed these requirements. So you, in order to graduate, will have 4 years of English, 4 years of math, including at least Algebra 2. You'll have more than 2 years of social studies, you'll have at least the 3 years of lab science, and you'll have at least 2 years of the same world language. So you'll automatically have that. If beyond the minimums, though, even at some of our state universities, they're going to expect a little bit more than this. So at more competitive colleges, these are some of the potential things to consider. This is not a list of classes that you have to have in order to get into competitive colleges, but some classes that some competitive colleges may be looking for. So first of all, either AP or dual enrollment courses. These are considered to be the most challenging levels. And so colleges that are more competitive do like to see that you've taken the most challenging levels and been able to be successful. They don't expect that you have to have all AP and dual enrollment courses, but that you maybe will have at least tried out a couple within subjects that are your strengths. taking those courses, if you're not going to do well, would harm your application as opposed to helping it. So please only consider those if you're recommended and you're going to be able to manage the workload. In math, instead of just having 4 years of math through Algebra 2, many of the more competitive colleges will hope that you will have made it at least to the pre-calculus level. And when it comes to science, many of the most competitive colleges will expect or prefer that you will have had some exposure to these three of the major science subjects: biology, chemistry, and physics. Again, this is not an absolute for every college, so check their requirements, but in general. And in general, the more years of a world language, the better when it comes to competitive colleges. Again, if you're able to be successful. So taking a third or fourth year, but struggling to get an A or a B is not going to benefit you. However, taking 4 years of the same language and getting an A or B is going to be extremely impressive to them. In general, too, during your senior year next year, it's important to look like you're just not trying to take it easy. So it doesn't mean you have to take the most challenging courses and everything out there, but you also want to make sure it doesn't look like you just took a bunch of easy electives and didn't keep up with most of the core subject areas. And if you're interested in a particular major, especially if it's a major where they have limited spots at colleges that you're looking at, you may also want to check their websites to see if they might require specific courses for specific majors. So for example, sometimes if you're interested in a nursing program or engineering or computer science, art, music, sometimes they will tell you that there are specific courses you have to have in high school in order to apply for those majors. And now I'm going to pass the torch to the next counselor who's going to let you know a little bit about the course selection process. Thank you.
The course selection process will begin right after February vacation, with students meeting with their counselors by grade level starting on February 22nd. So you'll go to either the library or the auditorium and be in with your counselor and all the other students in your grade who have that counselor. And that will also be split up by cohort. Online course selections open in March, and between the meeting with your counselor and putting your classes into Aspen, you will be talking to your teachers and your counselors about appropriate courses, and you'll also have a refresher on how to add your courses into Aspen. It's really important, being juniors, that you should really find a solid balance between classes that you enjoy, classes that a college might expect you to take, and also to choose the level of the class in which you can succeed. So we want you to challenge yourself and stretch yourself, but not to the point where you're going to be overwhelmed. And we also want you to have a little fun because it's your senior year, but not too much fun. You have to, again, find that balance. If you look at any college on Naviance and look at the college admissions tab on that college profile, you can scroll all the way to the bottom and it will tell you, maybe 8 times out of 10, it's not every college shares this, but many of them do, what the college requires in terms of how many years of a class. So you'll see that some colleges require 4 years of social studies or 4 years of a world language, whereas other colleges may want a minimum of 2 years of a world language, but they recommend that you take 3 or 4. So that tab can be really helpful. This is also something that you can ask at a college information session when you log in online and meet with a rep. It's really important that your course selections are in line with what the colleges expect to see you taking as a senior at BHS. You have other opportunities as a senior to take VHS classes, and some of you may have already taken one, but as a senior, you get priority seating in a VHS class, and you can take electives that BHS doesn't offer. This year, that rule has been a little bit relaxed because of Cohort C and online learning, but generally you take classes that we don't offer. So for example, you can't take psychology at Edgenuity because we offer it at BHS. Other opportunities that you have for credit are dual enrollment options. So these are classes offered at BHS that are actually taught by teachers who were certified by other colleges, UMass Boston or Middlesex, and that allows you to get Middlesex or UMass Boston credit for having taken that class at Burlington High School. If you're going into a Massachusetts State University college, a state university, this can be a really good savings for you, because as long as the grade is high enough, it transfers automatically into the community college or state university or UMass of your choice. The teachers who teach these classes can give you more information about dual enrollment once you're there. I'm going to talk next about state university admissions, and this includes the UMasses, Boston, Lowell, Dartmouth, and Amherst, and the state universities like Framingham State, Salem State, Fitchburg State. Generally, to apply to a Mass State college or university, you do have to have a minimum GPA of 2.0. They don't accept students whose GPAs are below a 2.0. But as long as your GPA is a 3.0 or above, that puts you in really strong contention without them having to consider any SAT scores. So in general, if your GPA is below a 3, you have to have that much higher an SAT or ACT score to, quote, balance it out. And I'll show you a sliding scale on the next slide. However, because so many state universities are test optional this year, they're really just encouraging students to apply no matter what their GPA is, as long as it's above a 2. Certainly, if you have the SAT scores to balance out that lower GPA, you should submit them. But if you don't, you're also being encouraged to apply anyway. So here's the scale, the sliding scale, and I hope hope it's not too small on your screen. But the top are the scores that they're looking for the UMasses. At the bottom are the state universities. So this student, for example's GPA, let's say, falls between a 3.1 and a 2.4. Suppose they have a 2.35 GPA. Ideally, the state college or university wants them, the UMass wants them to have an SAT score of 1110 or an ACT score of a 22 in order to balance off that GPA. Down here, though, if you're applying to a state university like Framingham State, it's a little bit less of an SAT benchmark, and that's 1070. But again, with so many colleges being SAT optional, this is there's definitely workarounds for this. And also, we don't know what's happening with the state colleges and universities, except for Amherst. Amherst is continuing their test optional policy. And we expect, though, that the colleges will continue to announce their plans throughout the spring. So be in touch with your counselor and pay attention to the college websites for those notifications. Another thing I want to call your attention to, especially with four-year college being somewhat pricey, is the Mass Transfer A to B degree program. A to B is a little acronym for Associates to Bachelors. The associate's degree is a 2-year college degree, and a bachelor's degree is the 4-year degree. So you need 4 years to get a bachelor's. However, with the Mass Transfer program, you would do 2 of those 4 years at a community college and then transfer into the UMass or Mass State University of your choice for the bachelor's degree. And this is an agreement among all of the community colleges and state colleges and universities. So no one is really exempt from this. You have to have a GPA of a 2.5 after your 2 years at, say, North Shore Community College, and then you can transfer into the Mass State University of your choice as long as they have room. There might be some competitive majors, so you should have more colleges on deck in case, just to make sure you have room to get into your program. If your GPA is above a 3, though, you are eligible for a tuition credit. They lock in the tuition and fees, so if those get raised, it doesn't count toward you. And then you also get a 10% additional tuition discount under the Commonwealth Commitment, also called ComCom. And it can be a real bargain to approach college this way. And I also want to point out there are 15 community colleges. Sometimes students look at, or I hear them in my office and they say things like, oh, I have to go to Middlesex, or I have to go to this school. It's still a choice. We have a very strong community college program in Massachusetts. You can go to any community college you want. All you need is a high school diploma, and you don't need SAT scores. You could go to North Shore Community College, Mass Bay Community College in Wellesley, Bunker Hill. It's really important to keep your options open. You can also apply to a mix of 4-year colleges and 2-year colleges and see how that plays out. And then I also just want to point out for Mass Art and Mass Maritime, they have some of their own admissions requirements. Especially for Mass Art, you need a portfolio. So the transfer into those schools is not automatic like the other schools. Overall, I've touched upon some of the factors in the admissions process, but I'm going to go into a couple more of them in a little bit more depth. The transcript, which I'll show you on the next page, letters of recommendation, which another counselor will be discussing later on. I also just want to say that recommendations have been really, really pivotal during the pandemic. So keep engaging with your junior teachers. You really want to have well fleshed out letters of recommendation so the colleges know who you are. I don't think that can be said to you now too many times. Extracurricular activities, and we'll also be talking about how you document those. Essays, standardized testing we've already touched upon, and social media and demonstrated interest. A recent study just came out that showed that admissions officers are increasing the extent to which they look at social media. And interestingly enough, it's sort of an equal a balance between they look at social media and it helps the student, and then they look at some other kid's social media and it hurts the student. You want to be one of the students for whom your social media helps your case when you apply. So again, clean up your Instagram, make things private, and make sure you're putting your best foot forward in all facets of your life when you apply. Demonstrated interest is the extent to which you engage with a college before you apply, and it shows them that if they admitted you, you'd really want to go. You'd say yes. So you can demonstrate interest by visiting. If you can't visit, you can engage online, attend virtual tours, attend virtual information sessions, and connect with current students. So those are a few things to keep in mind. And now I will go on to talk a little bit more about the transcript. This is the top of a Burlington High School transcript. It's a little blurry. And the most important part of this page is the credits and the GPA. So this student's GPA is a 3.7, and you can see here that it's weighted, and we share that with the college. But then the heart and soul of the transcript is here in the middle. And this is where we explain to a college what the classes that you took, what the levels were, and what your final grades were. Colleges never see interim grades. Well, they do. They see first quarter grades of senior year and mid-year grades of senior year. But for all of the other years, they see only final grades. This actually is a final transcript for a student, so you can see there are senior grades listed here, but for your purposes, that would be your first quarter grade or your mid-year grade. That's what would be listed in this column. And then lastly, we have the bottom of the transcript, which explains a little bit about the levels. You can see this transcript is a little bit old. We've just phased out CP1, and it tells you if you're honors, if something was pass-fail, and then it's signed and documented by actually our registrar, Mrs. Kavanaugh. There's also another piece of information that explains about the school. That's the school profile, and that will kick off the next round of slides.
Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Leary. The school profile is a document that is automatically sent to colleges along with a student's transcript. Every high school develops their own profile that provides colleges with an overview of things like student body, types of classes offered, GPA calculation, and other notable facts that might vary from high school to high school. This information is very helpful to college admissions reps when comparing applicants from different high schools. As you may already know, BHS does not provide students with a rank in class. At the start of senior year, students will have earned a cumulative GPA that is calculated using final grades from the 9th, 10th, and 11th grades. Once junior year GPAs are calculated, then we are able to provide the community with a GPA distribution graph that looks like this. Students can then use the graph to determine what percentile they might fall in within their graduating class. Please note that this is just an example. It is not accurate for the class of 2022. But here you can see that there are 2 students with a 4.5 or above. So you can assume that if you have a 4.6 GPA, that you are one of the top 2 students in your graduating class. If you have a GPA right around 3.3, then you can assume from this graph that you are in the top 50% of your graduating class. If you know anyone in the current senior class, you likely know about some of the changes that have occurred with standardized testing for college. The pandemic really changed the landscape of standardized testing, and we continue to receive policy updates from colleges almost on a daily basis. The vast majority of colleges went test optional this year for the class of 2021, with one of the main reasons being that so many students were shut out of taking the test due to cancellations. Many colleges have already decided that they will be test optional for the class of 2022, and some colleges have already committed to a 3-year test optional policy that would apply to the class of 2023. Students should always check individual college websites to confirm their test policies. Colleges have also provided additional guidance on if and when to send test scores. Ultimately, students are responsible for sending their test scores to colleges. When they take the test, they are allowed to select 4 colleges to receive their scores for free. Prior to this year, we always recommended that students take advantage of this opportunity because it can save $50. However, now that so many schools are test optional, it is recommended that students wait to see their results before sending them and only send them if they are above the average scores for the college. Even with so many colleges going test optional, we still think it's a good idea to take an SAT or ACT if you can do so safely and comfortably. You may plan to take either the SAT or ACT in the spring of junior year and again in the fall of senior year if possible. Most colleges will accept either the SAT or the ACT and do not prefer one versus the other. So which test you take is up to you. But note that BHS is not a test center for the ACT. So you would have to register for that test at another nearby location. Some good news is that BHS will be offering an SAT for juniors only in school on Tuesday, April 27th. Registration has not opened up just yet. More information will come from Mr. Adebato after the February vacation. To register for an SAT other than the one offered at BHS on April 27th, students should visit the College Board website. Tests are offered in March, May, and June of this year, but please note they are subject to cancellation at any time due to the ongoing pandemic. To check dates and to register for an ACT, students will need to go to actstudent.org and create an account there. If testing is required for any of the colleges that a student applies to, then they should aim to have all of their testing done by January of senior year, 2022. Some recent updates include SAT subject tests being eliminated. So some students will be excited about that. The SAT essay section is also being phased out. And as I mentioned previously, we have the addition of the in-school administration date on April 27th. Now, the TOEFL, that stands for Test of English as a Foreign Language. If a student moved to the US from another country within the last 8 years, then they may be required to take the test of English as a foreign language. Students, if this applies to you, you should check college websites for more information about this requirement so that you can plan your testing accordingly. And please see your counselor to discuss this further. Fairtest.org is a great resource that offers a central location for information about standardized testing and a list of school policies. However, we do recommend confirming that information with individual college websites. It's always good to cross-check. Fee waivers for standardized testing are available through your counselor for students already approved for free or reduced lunch.
Hi, I'm Liesl Smith, and I will be taking over the next section of this presentation. So next on the list of things that colleges will be looking at is creating an activities list. So this is activities list should be distinguished from resumes. It's not a resume, and it's not in the same format as a resume. The activity list is a summary of what you've done in high school. Now, sometimes you've done things your whole life. So sometimes this might include not just your sports and not just your clubs, but it might include Girl Scouts that you've done since 4th grade, or it might include gymnastics that you've done since you've been age 4. So you would include that so the longevity of it would show, but it wouldn't, so you don't have to necessarily just limit it to grades 9 to 11, 12. On it, you should also include things like your hobbies, your passions. What do you do outside school? Because that's ultimately what the purpose of this is to show colleges one other side of you. What else is there to you than just what you do in school? And this is your way of showing that. Your counselors will have examples of different formats for activity lists on their classrooms. And if they require that your activity list is due in the spring, that will be communicated to you. You're going to continue updating that into senior year, and you're going to use that in your college application. Now, often you use it in 2 ways. You're going to use it when you fill out the common application, which I'll talk about in a bit. That's part of that application that lots of schools use, asks for your activity list. And when you put that onto your Common App, you're going to need to think about the order of importance to you along with the amount of time you've committed to these different activities. The other purpose of your activities list is for consideration for scholarships and awards. The next thing is recommendations. When you are when you're being considered for college, most colleges are going to ask you for 1 or 2 teachers and often also your school counselor. So what you should do is you want to make sure that these teachers and we as counselors know you well and can speak to colleges about who you are, what motivates you, what are you passionate about. And so we get to know you better through our conversations about your plans for after high school. Teachers will get to know you better by you interacting with them in class. So this spring is going to be a really big time for you to interact in your online classes or in your in-person classes. So the teachers will get to know you better. You don't want to ask for too many letters. It's inconsiderate. Teachers spend a good amount of time presenting you in the best way possible, and it's just inconsiderate if you're not going to use all the letters, and some colleges restrict how many letters you can use. So don't ask for too many. You need 1 or 2 teachers plus your counselor, potentially people who know you outside school, like a coach or an advisor or your employer or your dance instructor who you also help teach with. But those are not substitutes for an academic letter. You'll absolutely need an academic letter. Primarily, the teachers you should be asking are for your teachers in your major subjects from junior year as well as senior year, potentially, if you've had those teachers before. Some of your deadlines may be in November or October, and they may not know you so well. With all the COVID stuff going on, colleges are telling us if you have a teacher from 10th grade who knew you very well, that could potentially be also considered, but you're aiming for junior year and potentially senior year. You should not expect to be allowed to read these letters. So if teachers want to share those letters with you, they can, but expect that you should be waiving your rights to read your letters, and you're expecting that that if you ask them to write you a recommendation, they know you well enough, and they're not going to write anything that couldn't be sent, and you just have to trust that. And honestly, if teachers felt like they couldn't write you a good letter, they would let you know that. Don't assume that the most effective letter comes from the class that you've earned the highest grade, because yes, that's great on one hand, but sometimes some of your best letters, the ones that show your work ethic, how you deal with adversity, how you handle a setback, sometimes that comes from a class where you had to work a little harder and didn't get that A+ or that A. In fact, actually, many colleges know that at times you're in college, you're going to have some difficulties, and they will appreciate hearing how you handle tough times and what you do. Do you advocate for yourself? Do you ask questions? What do you do when you have challenging moments? And so if you are having a difficult time now in the spring, do some things, stay after school, get peer tutoring, ask questions, do things that teachers can talk about in that regards. Make your request face-to-face, at least a month notice, share deadlines. Now, you're not going to be asking your teachers right now for their letters. I would say it's a little too early for that. I'd say probably early May, late April or so would be the soonest that you need to ask. Ask them face-to-face, which means stay at the end of class and say, can I have a few minutes and can I just chat with you for a minute? Or ask them at the end of class when you're in person. That would be face-to-face. Now, teachers may have their own requirements. If you want their letter, they may have a form that they want you to fill out, or an essay or a letter or something that they may want you to complete. The counseling department absolutely has a questionnaire that you must fill out. Another thing is college essays. If you look on the applications, they're going to have essay questions that you can start getting an idea over the summer, brainstorming what you'd like to write about. The common application is available now, and you can look at those essays now and see how many you can use that would potentially cover the same idea. Get ideas over the summer, and in the fall, senior English teachers will help you polish those essays up. I'll talk about these supplemental essays in just a minute. Over the summer, over the last couple of summers, we've had summer college sessions. We call them boot camps, college boot camps at Burlington High School, and that's also a way to get an English teacher to help you get started on this. So I keep referencing the Common Application. What is the Common Application? The Common Application is one application you fill out that many colleges will accept. However, they often have, there's the general Common Application, and then there's the little extra pieces that go with each college. So they might have extra questions like, at our school, would you live on campus? At our school, what would you major in? Some schools, the most competitive schools, are going to have supplements, and oftentimes it means extra essays you need to write. So the more competitive the college, the sooner you need to start considering these essays. You can look at the Common Application and you can see what those are for each college, and you can start working on those over the summer. In fact, some of my brightest students try to get those out of the way before school starts senior year. Common App website is commonapp.org. And so how this works is you fill out the Common Application, you communicate with your counselor, and we send the other schools out, the other forms out through Naviance. Okay, college admissions options. In a way, thinking about how you're going to apply to colleges kind of helps figure out your timeline in terms of your to-do list. What are you going to get done when? Regular decision is generally January 1st to March 1st, and you apply by whatever their deadline is in that stretch, and colleges will review all their applications, and then around April or so, they'll let you know. But you do not have to decide and let them know. You don't commit to any college until May 1st. So that's regular decision. Early action is the deadlines are earlier. You are applying earlier. You're applying usually November 1st till sometimes January 1st. So it's usually a couple months earlier than that regular deadline. Down south, there's often many southern colleges that have October 15th deadlines. So you need to be aware of that when you're asking for letters of recommendation, when you're writing your essays, when you're doing any kind of test, when you're doing all that. You just have to plan early. Why would you do this? If you apply early, you find out earlier in most cases. So students who applied with these November 1st early action deadlines have found out already if they're accepted or not. They're not waiting until April. So there are definitely benefits to this. Now, the thing about early action is it's non-binding, meaning you are applying early, but you're not committing until that May 1st deadline that all the regular decision people apply to. There's another early option, also early decision. Early decision, unlike early action, is binding. So you are telling a college, you're telling one college, you can only apply to one school early decision. You're telling them, if you accept me, I will go to your school. So you can see that has many benefits to that, because if you are telling them, accept me and I'm committing already, you're telling them that you're a sure thing, which is why in many cases this could be a very strategic way of applying to schools that are very competitive to get into, like Holy Cross, Boston College, Boston University, sometimes schools like that. In fact, actually, I've gotten emails recently that have said that at BU, BC, some other competitive schools to get into, that they have accepted upper 30s to up to 50% of their class through this early decision option. So again, early decision, you apply to one school, it's binding, you're telling them you'll go there. Early action, not binding, you're just taking an action early. You're just applying early, but you don't have to commit until May 1st. The last option was rolling admissions. In that option, you apply, colleges review your application as they're received, unlike many early decision where they kind of wait to see who they have in their pile of applications. Rolling admissions, they decide as they go, review as they go, and you find out often 3 weeks later. Very handy. Okay, so just to review, the things you need to get done, juniors need to get done by the end of the year. Create the list of potential colleges on Naviance, and you'll be doing that with your counselor as well. Complete the activity list. Ask your teachers for letters of recommendation, primarily your junior teachers. So again, you need to get to know them. Start your counselor questionnaire for their letter of recommendation. Many times it may not be due until the very beginning of next year, but at least you can start that. And create a Common App account and begin filling out the application. Okay. And next. Have a good day, everyone. Best of luck.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jackie Rogers, and I'm the School Adjustment Counselor here at Burlington High School. As part of today's presentation, I am going to share some information about do's and don'ts in terms of having conversations at home with your child during the college process. I am going to present those slides now. All right, here we go. So, a couple of tips for conversations. Let your teen drive the bus. So what we mean here is allowing your child to be the one to make the contacts, complete tasks, communicate with the counselor, and so forth. You really want your child in the driver's seat for this process. Also discuss restrictions up front. So if there's any factor that would prevent a certain college from being an option for your child, be direct about that at the start. At the same time, a bit of a caveat there is not limiting choices based on the sticker price. And we say that because there is financial aid and scholarships that can significantly reduce the sticker price of particular schools. So that is something to consider. A few more do's. So certainly remind your teen of deadlines. It's okay to be a helpful support in that way of checking in and making sure that your child is aware of the deadline and keeping up with it. Do also encourage college visits. With the pandemic, we know that many of these are happening virtually and are still quite beneficial. Do also try to limit conversations to 1 time per week. So we find, and I hear from students, that conversations daily about the college application process, or even multiple times daily, can be a significant stressor and might even lead your child to shut down and feel some stress that becomes a bit paralyzing in the process. So to avoid getting into that position and to encourage open communication about the process, setting a parameter of 1 or even 2 times a week of that conversation, maybe around the dinner table if possible, or a mutually convenient time, is strongly recommended. And definitely don't want to do this one, create accounts on behalf of your child. So it really should be all coming from your child. All right, next is social emotional readiness. So these are a few qualities that we hope to see in young people this age during the college process and just in general. So something to keep an eye on would be the following: conscientiousness, self-management. So self-management would be your child managing the process with support from home, but also being in the driver's seat again, making appointments and keeping track of deadlines with some help. Self-regulation, another important sign of social emotional readiness for college in general. So the ability to manage one's emotions and use some healthy coping strategies to do so. Resilience. We know life brings a lot of adversity. So the ability to pick ourselves back up, using the supports that we need, identifying the supports we need, and moving forward. Again, a very important skill, especially leaving, the relatively safer nest of the schooling experience, the high school experience, and going out into the world of college beyond. Risk management. So again, kind of in terms of thinking about the possible risks that can be out there for young people and your child's ability to navigate that. Self-acceptance is a huge one. Looking at the list, I'm perhaps even thinking of this as a first bullet, right? So our ability to accept ourselves, our levels of self-esteem, our levels of self-compassion, kindness to ourselves in terms of self-talk and self-image is really huge and a really protective factor, really at all ages. And then again, going into a new world in terms of college life. And another really big one is an open mindset and help seeking. Being able to experience setbacks, make mistakes, and then see it as an opportunity for growth is a really important skill to cultivate. And we hope students are cultivating in this time, in their lives. And then help seeking. We know that seeking support from our support network, whether that's family and friends, whether that's a counselor or all of those support people, can again be extremely helpful and protective. All right, and that is it for me. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here today. I'm going to stop presenting, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentation. Take care.
Hello, I'm Gloria Watasek, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about students in need of support services at the post-secondary level. Colleges most certainly grant academic accommodations to students on a case-by-case basis. It's a very individualized process, so we recommend that students reach out to their counselor and talk about a plan of action. Do they want to disclose that they have a documented disability in the form of a 504 or an IEP, an individual education plan? These formalized plans usually would have updated testing, cognitive and achievement testing that the students can share with the college level. Most institutions do require the updated testing to take a look at what accommodations the student has received and the need for them. Again, it is such an individualized process, so it is difficult to say that what works in one college will also be given at another. So it is important as students are researching colleges that they take a look at the supports that are offered. There are standard support services such as an English writing lab or a math tutoring lab. However, for more formalized accommodations, then the students would most certainly have to disclose this testing and a formalized plan. Again, it is important to talk to the folks at that institution to see what the specific requirements are, what the deadlines for application are, and again, to have discussions with our counselors ahead of time. Students that are applying to Massachusetts State Universities who submit documentation of a disability are eligible for an exemption from standardized testing. However, due to the unique circumstances this year, that doesn't really apply right now and until next year, but it's something to keep in mind for the future if it comes to play. But right now, it is important just to check each individual school's website. But most likely, definitely at the state level, it won't come into play at least this year. Additionally, for students that are seriously thinking about playing a college sport at the Division I or a Division II level, it is important that they take a look at the NCAA Clearinghouse website. Again, this is a very individualized process as well, and students would have to create a profile and take a look at minimum GPA requirements and course requirements for that Division I and II level. This does not apply for Division III. There is no specific course or GPA requirement. But again, these are conversations that the student, their coaches, and their parents should have with the institutions that they're looking at to make sure, especially as we look at courses for senior year, that the students are on track and they have everything they need in order to have the option to play at that higher level. Additionally, there is another option after, the students have really been looking at more regularly and it's become more popular. It's the gap year. What is a gap year? A gap year is time that is intentionally taken after high school and before college. And it's, it could be for different circumstances. A student wants to explore a particular interest, wants to volunteer, or just wants to have a little bit of time in between that high school graduation and into their freshman year of college. This can take the form of work, volunteering in the US or abroad. It could be, language immersion programs, working, in exchange programs, or locally, some of the programs that are more popular around the area are outward bound or, for example, City Year. And these programs can vary very widely. It could be, a month program, 2 months. It could be a full semester, a full year. Some of them, there is a cost to them. And then others, there could be, credit that you could be given for the college level or a small stipend. And definitely check out the counseling blog for links and resources on varied gap year options. Again, it is strongly recommended that if a student is thinking about a gap year, that they still go through the traditional process of applying to college during their senior year. And then what the student can choose to do is just defer admissions into the college of their choice. So the student would go through the application process, get accepted, choose their college, and then let them know that they're taking 1 year off. They will hold a student spot, and then they can return a year later. Now, all schools are fine with that option as long as that it's time that they're actually pursuing, a hands-on learning or enrichment opportunities. But again, this is something that you should definitely talk to your counselor about, but also discuss with the admissions folks that you'd be working with. And I think next is our next counselor. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about college affordability. We like to use the term affordability because if students do their research with the help of a counselor and we find an appropriate college, it hopefully is affordable. So we like to have a little positive spin on the whole financial aid process. And when dealing with financial aid, you're going to hear lots of terms and phrases throughout the process. And we just like to go over what the most common terms are that you're going to hear. And also, please keep in mind, this is not a financial aid night. We do work with an agency called MIFA, which I'll explain in a couple of slides. But we would encourage you to reach out to MIFA for any questions or concerns. Again, I will talk about MIFA in a couple of slides. Scholarships and grants. This is the type of financial aid that you would like to qualify for. This is basically free money from federal or state aid or from an institution. So whatever college or university you've been accepted to and plan to attend, in some cases you can receive a scholarship or a grant. So this is the type of financial aid that you want to receive, because again, you don't need to pay it back. Of course, there's loans that through the federal or state government that are subsidized or unsubsidized. You can defer interest. So there's different types of loan options through the federal or state governments. And then there's work study. Work study is essentially the college or university providing employment for a student, and it's expected that student use that money for paying for college. So that's called work study, and it's actually set up through the financial aid process. You're going to hear a lot about different types of forms as you navigate through the college application process and the financial aid process. The most common is the FAFSA form. The FAFSA, free application for federal student aid. It is available beginning October 1st of senior year. For years and years, it was always January 1st of senior year, but now it's open in October. This form isn't something you would start working on now. You really need to actually wait until the updated form becomes available. The good news is over the past 7 or 8 years, they've really streamlined it. It actually pulls all your tax information in. I think there is a lot of hype around this form, and we know that some families will pay their accountant or pay an outside person or agency to help them complete this form. We would encourage you to not do that. Again, if you'd like to do that, feel free. But this is a form that when you sit down and add all your information, it doesn't take more than an hour or so. So it is a form. Most colleges will ask you to fill this out. Technically, it is optional. CSS profile, that is another popular financial aid form. Now, the FAFSA is an application to see if you qualify for state or federal aid. And with the CSS profile, that is through institutional aid, meaning the college or university will review the profile, and then they'll provide potentially you with a scholarship, grant, or any other type of a loan. But this would be through the college itself using institutional funds. So FAFSA, again, is for all colleges. CSS profile is only for specific colleges. The profile, again, you could Google it, and you can identify what colleges require or ask you to fill out a profile. It's not required. And you would want to do a little bit of research on that. Some colleges may have their own specific scholarship applications, and you'll learn that as you navigate through the college search process. Boston University, for example, offers a presidential scholarship. That would be through the college application process. You would file this application separately. So sometimes it really benefits students to make sure they look at the financial aid websites at the colleges they're applying to. And then you heard me mention MIFA. They are a nonprofit agency, the Massachusetts Educational Financial Authority. They offer lots of opportunities for parents and students to get information on financial aid. They have webinars on a variety of events. And with COVID and the lack of face-to-face meetings, they've actually developed and refined something called the MIFA Institute. The MIFA Institute, again, if you were to go to this website, you would see a whole list of options in terms of getting yourself educated on the financial aid process. I would highly encourage parents to check that out. Please know where the money's coming from. Again, it's through the state and federal government. College and universities provide funding. And then in some cases, private agencies. Students can get scholarships at various companies, educational foundations. So there's a lot of places where the money comes from. One big thing to think about is parents. Where are you employed? Oftentimes, your employer may provide scholarship opportunities. So I would encourage you to look into that as well. Local scholarships. So when talking about local scholarships, this is just exclusive to Burlington residents and Burlington high school students. Local scholarships are scholarships that are usually just paid out in freshman year, and they can vary. The Burlington Scholarship Program offers anywhere between $400 and up to $5,000 awards. Okay, and so the way students would have access and the ability to receive these scholarships are through different applications. Scholarship America, which is Scholarship America, is through the Burlington Community Scholarship Foundation, which is the BCSFDS. That's a tongue twister. So that application is available online. We're going to be talking to seniors about this in March, reminding them. There's a general scholarship application, which is a hard copy application. Another scholarship program is Adopt a Class. All the volunteer hours parents did K through 8. And then it transitions to in ninth grade, students start doing it. And all these hours are accumulated and tracked. So senior year, upon graduation, as long as students fill out an application, they could be rewarded for all the volunteer work that's been done over the years. So again, more information would be communicated about this throughout senior year. And just know last year, $400,000 total was awarded to graduating seniors. So we really encourage students to keep their eyes on that. Naviance, as you have heard, is our college software program. And we also use that to manage scholarships. So Naviance lists all the scholarships, and we start updating scholarships for the current junior class will be sometime this summer. When we say use caution, we really want you to be aware that if someone's asking for money to help you identify and find scholarships, please run it by us. Oftentimes we see that sometimes students and parents can be taken advantage of. We don't want that to happen. We want to make sure it's a reputable agency, and oftentimes a red flag should shoot up if someone is asking you for money to help you find scholarships. Just some upcoming events. We do have traditionally, we would have a live breakfast where parents can come in. We provide coffee, bagels, muffins, fruit. And unfortunately, that's not happening this year due to COVID, but we are having our breakfast virtually. So we have a course selection process breakfast Wednesday, February 24th. And the college topics for the summer is Wednesday, June 9th. We will post this information. It actually is on the district or the high school website on the calendar, but these events take place at 9:00 in the morning. Again, course selection process breakfast and college topics. The college topics is really specifically for juniors and junior parents. As always, please let us know if you have any questions. We've covered quite a bit of information, and we would ask you to please encourage you to reach out to your son or daughter's counselor